Welcome to another SourceFuse Talking Out Cloud, our leadership chat series. My name is Liz Grint, Senior Marketing Manager here at SourceFuse. And if you're still unfamiliar with who we are, we're a strategic digital transformation company with a passion for helping businesses around the world evolve through cloud native technologies. We're also extremely proud to be an AWS Premier Tier Partner. Plus, we've been expanding our global reach and our presence in Australia. What's the connection, you say? Well, you're about to find out because I'm really excited to introduce three exceptional guests who will explore the power of the AWS Partnership and collaborative growth initiatives. We have Chris Casey, Director, AWS Partners Asia Pacific and Japan, and from SourceFuse, our CEO and co-founder, Gautam Ghai, and ANZ Managing Director, Kamal Singh. Welcome to all three of you.
Thanks for having us, Liz.
Thank you.
Okay, so before I ask Gautam and Kamal to lead today's discussion, it would be really great, Chris, if we could start with you and if you could describe to our audience a bit about your background and experience, especially in relation to your own AWS journey and your responsibilities as the head of partner management for the APJ region.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, it's great to be here. And firstly, thank you very much for the SourceFuse team for doing this podcast, number one, and then also for having us on. Yeah, as you sort of teased, I currently live in Melbourne, Australia, in the same city as Kamal. But I've been with AWS for many years. Actually, I've been here for nearly 7 years now, and I've worked across the AWS business in a few different functions. But prior to this year, I was working in our North America teams, so out of New York. And did a few different roles there, looking after our industry technology partnerships. So that's how AWS is partnering very deeply with software companies that play a meaningful role in industry. I've worked on our AWS marketplace teams, and I've also had the opportunity to work within the AWS service teams, namely helping build and launch the AWS Data Exchange, which is a service that helps companies exchange data. So all of my roles at AWS have been in and around helping AWS customers with and through other companies, i.e. our partners. And certainly my role now at AWS, I have the privilege of looking after what we do with AWS partners across Asia Pacific and Japan, and that includes some of our premier tier partners like SourceFuse, all the way through to small and up and coming startups who might be software companies who are trying to take their first product to market. So it's really exciting. It's a really diverse range of partners, and obviously the opportunity across the region is tremendous too.
Yeah, wow. So you're covering a lot.
Yeah, but it's fun.
Yeah. So now I'm going to hand the baton to Gautam and Kamal. Where would you like to start with Chris today?
Yeah, so I'll sort of kick this off. Thank you first, Chris, also for my end from joining it. When I learned that you've accepted doing a Talking Out Cloud, I was like, this would be a great opportunity for all three of us to connect, and just kind of understand how this partnership can work better for us and what you see in the region in general as well. So thank you for doing that. Kamal, over to you. I think yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Gordon, and thank you, Chris. Really appreciate your time and accepting the Talking on Cloud with SourceFuse. And Chris, as you kind of briefly touched upon, that there's plenty of partners out there, in excess of 100,000 partners, and your portfolio around APJ is significant as well. What are your thoughts in terms of how the customers kind of perceiving this AWS partnership, which means how do they look for a specific partner as opposed to the other partners out there, and what are your kind of key takes on that, from ANZ as well as in the APJ region there?
Yeah, great question. So if you're looking at it from our customer lens, and if Amazon, I think, is pretty well known as being the world's most customer-centric company, or that's what our objectives are. When we're thinking about the partner business and how we're building capability and capacity with our partners, it's always with that view. And when we're talking to our customers and our mutual customers, Kamal, and ANZ is no different, a lot of the time they're coming to us jointly with either a business problem they're trying to solve, or hopefully a business opportunity and a growth story that they're going after. But almost always that is pretty unique to their industry or the business unit that they're trying to transform. And how that typically then translates for us working together with any of our partners, SourceFuse included, is how are we matching the right partners with the right capability and the right specialization and the right differentiation to best solve that outcome for the customer. So we do have quite a vast network of registered partners in the AWS Partner Network, and we don't take that lightly. We really appreciate that there's a lot of companies that are looking to AWS as a vehicle for them to grow their business. But almost all of our customer conversations, when they're trying to solve those business problems, come back to which of those partners have the specialty and the capability and the capacity. So the folk on the ground or the technology that we need to be able to solve the business problem at the scale that we need. So whether it's a large enterprise or a startup, in all of the locations that they need. So in the partner organization within AWS, some of you that are familiar with it might have heard us talk about things like competencies and certifications. So those are very conscious programs that we've put together, and we've got tens of these competencies now, generative AI being one of the latest ones, where partners can actually submit some of their previous work, some of their previous case studies, and go through that program where our teams can then give an independent perspective to a customer on this partner has got this specialty and it's badged, if you like, with the competency. So the customers can start to get a sense of which AWS partner ultimately they might want to choose for the business opportunity or the business challenge that they're trying to solve.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. That was a great response. In terms of the in-house capabilities, what are you saying that, are the customers kind of more inclined towards kind of taking the work in-house, or their reliance on the partners across APJ is pretty much there when it comes to embarking on their cloud journey?
It does depend, and obviously a lot of these customers, some of them that have been working and have had workloads on the cloud for some time, they've built some in-house expertise because they've been doing this for quite some time. But the vast majority of them are still looking to make sure they're bringing in the best practices because this landscape is evolving so quickly. And I don't know, Gautam, whether you're seeing that also globally too, but constantly trying to be at that cutting edge of the intersection of the latest technologies. And obviously generative AI is one of those ones that everyone talks about, but there's a lot of foundations around large data sets, data sovereignty requirements, and even the expertise of some of that fundamentals where customers might be, your initial reaction might be, okay, I'm going to pull in some experts from SourceFuse that can talk about that latest technology. But I also might need some experts that are helping me with the fundamentals and the foundation to get me set up to best capitalize on these new technologies is also what we're seeing. So, if you're asking as a generalization, Kamal, absolutely, it's more in the momentum of how we're working more and more with other companies, i.e. AWS partners, to best position my organization to be set up for success. I don't know, Gautam, if you see the same.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you say this, Chris, because what we're seeing, interestingly enough, since one of our focus areas is ISVs, and by definition, ISVs have their own technology teams. How they're more focused, to say, on their product innovation, but a lot of the stuff that they need, which is sort of adjacent to it, especially with, say, our latest sort of go-to-market around, our SaaS control plane, for example, is something that we bring in as specialized value, and partners like us can potentially bring in special value to the picture, allowing the customer to, say, remain more focused on their day job, which is basically innovating their product and moving that forward, as an example of what can be. And obviously in more traditional industries, I think cloud capabilities, are at a premium anyway. So, that's quite interesting. And that's an interesting to segue in one things I wanted to chat about, which is how are you seeing this whole, do you think cost is a primary driver as well? Especially, costs around, say, APJ, Singapore, Australia, etc., could be quite high. And do you think there is value in the onshore offshore model? What are your thoughts there?
Listen, each company will have a different appetite, probably based on, some of the workload they're trying to transform when it comes to that cost conversation. Um, but when you're talking about, and we could talk about things like modernizations, and even in the context of modernizing a mainframe, like you're
Sure,
not
sure.
talking about um, running a proof of concept that doesn't necessarily materially matter to the business. Like you're talking about a decades-long decision and fundamental transformation of the foundation of your organization. And when you're talking about workloads like that, sure, cost, I think every organization CFO would not be doing their job if they're not thinking about costs in terms of that return on investment calculation. But is it a conversation where customers are running to whoever is the lowest price and not then looking at the quality or the comprehensiveness or the criticality of the output? Absolutely not. So it's still very much a return on investment calculation, I would say. Obviously, heightened sensitivity around cost and being thoughtful about where we're spending and why. And customers absolutely are very much leaning into that, but not to the point where it's like, oh, I'm just going to choose whoever's cheapest. Um, for the mission critical workloads in the organization, for sure, and even for some of these newer capabilities that might help grow the business. If you would hate to be that CEO that misses the opportunity and the growth opportunity because you happened to go a little bit shortchanged on
Yeah,
sort
no,
of
I
the proof
understand.
of concept that you could have gone after.
But actually, it's not always about cost as well, isn't it? It's about access to talent and, and speed to market. So I think, that's another, even for us as a business, we're, as you know, in 4 geographies, very often because we've been able to discover this new way of being even more hybrid. Uh, I remember we were able to say we were looking for a machine learning engineer and we found somebody great in Colombia, and we were able to bring them in. And so it is not really about being the cheapest, but being, having this sort of global talent pool that we can bring in as required to solve problems anywhere. So yes, I do agree about the sort of time to market, though. I think that's sort of, and the ROI piece that need to sort of work together as well to inform this.
100%. And I think that's one of the value propositions I do think SourceFuse bring as a differentiator to customers, that sort of onshore, offshore hybrid model. Like we talk about hybrid cloud solutions, in terms of Outpost and wavelengths, some of the technology we have. I guess you could frame SourceFuse as a hybrid operating model, if you like, where it can bring the best of the capabilities of SourceFuse from wherever they happen to be in the world. And if that means there's a bunch of folk with Kamal and I in Melbourne for a specific project, that's great. But also if you need to tap into, any of the other centers you operate out of, that is extremely helpful for customers because they might, or almost all of them, do not have that structure internally for them to be able to just draw upon expertise wherever they need to around the world.
And I
Yeah.
agree, Chris. I think
Mhm.
COVID's kind of open the doors for the acceptance of this model a lot more than what it was before. And especially I can talk about ANZ, the tier one financial services customers here. They've got their captive centers overseas, right? So if financial services customers can have it, then definitely it's getting into mainstream to actually get that extension of capabilities, not just locally, but leveraging the offshore capabilities as well. So spot on. I think it kind of resonates with how SourceFuse is actually embarking on that as well. You briefly touched upon the modernization aspect of it as well, Chris. From SourceFuse perspective, modernizations in our DNA. We have actually coined the term modernization-led migration as well, where we actually see modernization at the heart of everything that we do. And everyone can do the lift and shifts, so can we. But then do we really want to? Does that excite us? Probably not. So given that we've got an in-house, repeatable assets and processes that we've created, and we call it, SourceFuse Arc. And that's getting a lot of traction with our customers. So I wanted to kind of understand from your perspective as well that, where is modernization on agenda for 2025 for AWS, and are the customers kind of understanding that, what would it take for them to actually embark on maybe an app or a database modernization side of things?
Uh, it's absolutely front and center to answer your question directly in terms of our priority and strategy for 2025, because it is very much top of mind for customers. When we're talking about their ability just to save costs in some ways, to the point before, Gautam, but also more importantly, innovate faster, and drive more productivity or be able to do more things and have a broader impact with the technology that they have in-house. It's absolutely front of mind for them, and it's absolutely front of mind for us. You touched on just a few examples there, whether it's databases, applications, or even all the way down into mainframes, Kamal. I think we're now at the stage where customers are thinking about how they're best positioning their business for the next evolution of growth, whatever industry that they are in. And they have also potentially seen some examples where they've just done a lift and shift, and maybe they haven't realized all the benefits that they assumed in the original business case that they were going to be able to. So some of those lessons learned, I think, is doubling down with some of these technology shifts that we're seeing more broadly, where modernization now becomes a bigger priority. Now, the modernization aspect is not just about the actual technology, it's also about the culture, the people, the processes. And so I do think working with a partner that not only can do the technology aspects of it, but also can provide that best practice of whether it's actually consulting or just showing customers how to operate modern architecture and how to capitalize on it too, is also a differentiator that our customers are looking from partners. But when you think about the full slate of modernization opportunities that are out there, I do think 2025 is going to be the year where you start to see that really accelerate, and you start to see companies make some more of those longer term bets of like the realization is going to be in 3 to 5 years, but we have to get this done now if we want to see our business propel to the next stage of growth.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Chris, because I think modernization brings in that edge in terms of helping customers achieve their scalability, security side of things as well. So which kind of wraps the modernization in a way to make sure that the customer gets the best outcome, if they embark on that modernization journey there.
In fact, Chris, an interesting thing you bring up. We've done this sort of partnering with our customers a few times, where we've sort of worked with them to, as we do their, work through their modernization projects or whatever we're bringing to them, is also work through the value chain and the development pipeline and how they're actually developing and what are those best practices. And that's a collaboration. And not just being sort of consultative, we've learned a lot as well. So that sort of coming together and is really valuable. And also, I think it helps all our customers because then we're able to kind of become the center of getting all these best practices collated and then being able to pass that on. I think that's also incredibly valuable in my opinion. Yeah. Sorry, Kamal, I cut you. But yeah, go for it.
All good. Just probably last one from my perspective, Chris. So in terms of as SourceFuse, we're a global organization. We've got offices in US, UK, delivery centers in India. We've recently, one of our biggest customer happened to be in Japan, and then obviously we've got operations in Australia, New Zealand as well. So what would be your kind of take from a partner org perspective? Probably top 2 or top 3. Things that you expect out of a partner to actually succeed in a geo?
Probably the first thing is just being very, very clear on the differentiation of your business. And I think SourceFuse do an incredible job at being very clear on what you guys do very well and where you see like you adding a tremendous amount of value for your customers. That is extremely helpful in terms of partnering with AWS, because you mentioned it before, Kamal, but there are a lot of partners on AWS, and we are lucky enough to have a very broad customer base, and a lot of the time the intersection of that broad customer base asking us for some very specific help and questions. It's more helpful for us when our partners are very clear on what the differentiated value proposition they bring and what their focus areas are. So we can do that matchmaking as efficiently and effectively as possible. The other one is just really leaning into understanding what each other's operating models are and go-to-market strategies are. We've had the privilege of working with you and your team here in ANZ on everything from events to webinars and different types of workshops and forums. And just being in sync on that, so we're showing up to customers and prospective customers, because ultimately, in the nicest possible way, they have a business problem to solve, and they would much rather work with what feels like a singular entity, AWS and SourceFuse coming together to help solve the problem versus, engaging with AWS and then engaging separately with SourceFuse and then coming together to pull that solution or that opportunity together for them is also critical. And then from the AWS side, we do spend a lot of time making sure that we have the best programs to help our partners be as successful and sustainably profitable on AWS as possible. So making sure that you're leveraging everything that is actually available to you, and asking the right questions on what could be made available to you, are probably the three things I'd recommend to any partner. But certainly in my experience, and I've been lucky enough to work with you and the team more closely since February of this year, the SourceFuse team in ANZ and in APJ and around the world are very good at those three things, which then makes it a lot easier for us to align our teams and, more importantly, align around some specific customer opportunities that we might go after together.
Yeah. And I just want to add something as well, because from the marketing side of things, while Gautam and Kamal and all the technical team are really working on getting those competencies under our belts, the marketing side is huge in AWS. And together we've been doing some really great campaigns. And, I would say that is part of building that foundation as well. Actually, how do we become known? Chris, you mentioned about the events that we've done together, and even things like this, our Talking Out Cloud series. So yeah, I would say the marketing team at AWS have really been godsend as well.
Yeah, and as somebody who I get a bit more of a broader view, and we've as a partner decided to we kind of got into AWS almost accidentally. It's a funny story how we became a partner. It was quite unintentional. And then it becoming sort of front and center of our entire business. We've decided to really double down, and we're AWS only. And the reason is because of this exact thing that you mentioned, Chris, that it is AWS that brings that the go-to-market with the partners together, making it a sort of picture for the customer. And of course, the funding is a cherry, on the cake, obviously. But what I have to say, as somebody leading an organization, that there isn't an organization like AWS as far as partnering goes. So that, congratulations for that. I think you guys, the AWS team does a wonderful job of putting it together.
Well, we really
Yeah.
appreciate that, and very honestly, we don't take it for granted. Number one, like we very much view that as a privilege we have, that you're trusting in building your business with AWS. And I think, like, just to give you a little bit of insight on the inside for AWS, like, we truly view our partners when we're discussing it internally as an extension of our team. So there's only X amount of employees AWS has in ANZ or anywhere else. And we truly believe that AWS as a technology can have a much broader impact to a much broader customer base across APJ than, our teams can ever imaginably reach and successfully help use the technology ourselves. So we try to keep it pretty simple in that respect, Gautam, Kamal, and Liz, where we're viewing our partners as an extension of our team, which is why we want to make sure we're supporting them, showing up to our customers, helping them differentiate, because ultimately that's going to help our customers succeed more with AWS. And if they can do that with SourceFuse helping them migrate and modernize mainframes, help them with the opportunity that exists around VMware and how they might be able to migrate and modernize some of the workloads that run on virtual machines, or in brand new technology like data and AI, and how they might be able to capitalize on the opportunity for their business in generative AI. All of those things and what I just said remains true. Our partners are an extension of our team.
Absolutely. In fact, interesting you bring up Gen AI. We've had it has been an interesting sort of 1 year, 1.5 years since, this whole piece really was brought to market. And in your experience, where do you see the market go for Gen AI? What is your sort of expectation, as you sort of come to a more maturing cycle about the technology? Just wanted to get a take on that.
Yeah. Probably two things I would call out. Just to give everyone a little bit of the background about AWS's very deliberate positioning in this space. We see generative AI and our structure and framework has been 3 layers of the stack. There's obviously the need for the infrastructure and chips to train and run inference on those large language models. We believe that model choice and selection is really important for customers who might want to build applications. So the second layer of the stack, we have a service called Amazon Bedrock, which allows you to pick and choose models and change models as models evolve over time. And then, of course, at the application layer, we have Amazon Q for Business, Amazon Q for Developer. There's also integrations with services like Connect. But to answer your question as to like where I think this might go, in certainly that middle layer of the stack in terms of the amount of large language or foundational models that are out there, there are some very large ones today. There are a lot of companies that are building large language models themselves on their own data. Some of those companies might choose to keep those internal because they see that as a differentiator. But I do think you will see more and more companies, maybe traditional companies you would expect, but also others, start to open source those models and even create things like small language models, so smaller models that are very specific to a specific purpose, which we very consciously think fits well into our strategy, because if you're giving people model choice, ultimately you're empowering developers to pick and choose a model that is best suited for their application at that point in time. And if in the future there's more models made available, they're going to have that option to choose it. The other aspect is, I think there was a little wave of like AI agents and agents taking actions on behalf of insights that were created, but I'm not actually quite sure that has truly been ingrained yet in terms of workflows as much. So, I think you probably thought my answer was going to be proof of concepts to productions in 2025. I think that will happen. But I also think you're going to see more and more applications where there might be AI agents behind some of the intuitive next steps that a user would normally take in an application, which might actually be something you don't even notice, but it's helping, again, make for the individual user and application make faster and better decisions.
Yeah. That's quite insightful. In fact, we have sort of two parts to the story that, in our practice. Of course, one is, like you said, building applications that are more Gen AI enabled. And the other place where we've seen a lot of value, and I think and we're trying to double down on that, is developer productivity. That's something that we've really and especially with Q Developer, and making all of how do you, we're trying to disrupt ourselves to see what are in the entire development pipeline, what are the various places that we can get more agency out of Gen AI to really and we've had some success, especially in modernization. It's been a fantastic journey. So I recommend anybody sort of looking at building, improving practices to really just evaluate what parts of your developer pipeline can you automate, and transform using these tools. That's been quite key for us over the past year or so.
And in addition to that as well, Gautam, in my opinion, I think, for the last couple of years, Gen AI was kind of the buzzword, like, the new kid on the block. Everyone wants to kind of embark on it. I think we are really at the cusp of it, where it's going to be becoming mainstream, where it's expected to have that in each of your delivery cycles. Like, it should be, business as usual, whereas, a Gen AI has been seen as a separate piece, to be actually put on top of your traditional development. So I think it's probably about time, rather than, just calling it as, a Gen AI as a specific piece, probably, amalgamating it with your current delivery model itself.
And any I mean, I know this is probably not going to go out before reInvent, but any insights you want to share with us? What's coming next, Chris? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of announcements at reInvent. Actually, one that I can talk about today, because we did announce a preview of it, was a new capability, Amazon Elastic VMware service, that is now available in preview. So we actually just launched that yesterday in the US at the time that we're filming this podcast. So for everyone, feel free to go and check that one out. But yeah, there'll be a bunch of announcements at reInvent, which is coming up the first week of December. Lots of intertwining and featuring of partners throughout a lot of the AWS messaging. You're going to continue to see that again, because we really see partners as an extension of our team and an extension of our technical capabilities. So it's going to be exciting. There'll be tens of thousands of people in Las Vegas, all talking about the benefits and the opportunities of the cloud. So it's always one of the most energizing weeks for us. At the end of it, it's a little tiring, but it's definitely one of the most energizing weeks for us.
Unfortunately, I'm going to miss it this time, but I'm going to definitely ask my team to come and say hello.
Yeah.
We'll have some folks there for sure this time.
Yeah.
I think, thank you so much, Chris, for the time. Really do appreciate it. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for having me. And honestly, thank you so much for the partnership. SourceFuse is, as Liz mentioned, a Premier Tier Partner of AWS globally, and we're really excited about all of the different opportunities with SourceFuse. We obviously have a very well-established business with you in some countries, and then in some of these other countries across Asia Pacific and Japan, we have such a huge opportunity with SourceFuse. So we're only really just getting started, but the momentum's really fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Oh, that's lovely, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. Thanks, Gautam and Kamal, as well, for leading the discussion today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks as always, Liz. Yeah.
And thanks, as always, to our audience for watching. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you're notified each time we post a new video. Join us again soon for another SourceFuse Talking Out Cloud.